My dudes, what's going on? Welcome again to another tier list. I think the last time we did a tier list was when we did our packs for gems to see which ones were the best and our gem shop before this. Well, thanks to the introduction of cosmic balls, which are new to the winter event, that will give you 2 times your bonus if you have maxed it out first in the arcade with golden balls. If you guys don't know, it takes approximately 32,000 golden balls to max out a single upgrade without the stamp that does gold ball reduction. So we're going to discuss each upgrade, how you should prioritize to level up first, maybe use your cosmic balls you get from the event. So we have S tier, as it's something that you should definitely prioritize. A tier is definitely the next batter up, definitely something that you should consider. B tier is middle of the pack. It's okay if you want to, but it seems like it's a little bit expensive for the price. C tier is something that you're kind of just going to avoid altogether because it's not really all that worth it. And F tier is you should just not do it. It's just not worth it. It's a waste of balls because 32,000 balls is very, very expensive. So with that being said, let's get into it. Write in the comments what your favorite hole is. Mine's your mom. Our first one we have, chat, is base damage. At the max bonus, it will give you 100. And with cosmic, it will give you ×2. So it'll be 200 in total. I don't know about you, but this is not worth it. This is just simply F tier. It is just a complete waste of time. I think all of us agree. It's just not very strong, unfortunately. Next we have is catching XP percent, which at max will give us 25% and cosmic will be at 50%. I don't know about you. I'm not really huge on catching XP. Catching XP is kind of a dime a dozen. It's not really going to be that beneficial, that helpful in the later game. I think chat and I have come to the agreements that it is C tier. I mean, it's not bad for XP, but it's not the greatest at the same time. So, I mean, personally, it's not really a big fan. So, C tier is where it stays. We have the gold coin, which is percent cash from monsters. And we also have the luster coin, which is cash from mobs. The gold one will give us 10%. ×2 will be 20%, and the green one will give us 15% at max with ×2 at 30%. I think these are always going to be valuable. These are always going to be good. I would say that they would be better if they were higher in percentage, but unfortunately they're not. So they do stay below at B tier. Definitely something you might want to think of. It's available. Maybe put a couple points in it to just get some extra money percent, because in the early game, it is super hard to farm money. So just getting to that point will just make it a little bit easier for you. So I would say going forward, the 2 coins, B tier. Next up we have is class XP percent. Well, we'll give you 10% at max, and if you ×2, we'll give you 20%. I don't know about you, this is trash. Literally, grind time is better than this. Literally, basic hats are better than this. This is not worth it. It is F tier by far. Do anything else that will give you the XP percent, and it'll be easy peasy. It goes in F tier, below base damage. The next one we have is shiny critter percent. And at max, it will give us 50%. And if you double it, will be 100%. I personally think when it comes to shiny critter percent chance, by the time you get to this point, it will become irrelevant. You don't need it. Maybe it'll help a little bit in the early game, but for the most part, going forward, it is something that's going to be maybe C tier at most. It would not make it a B tier. If anything, it'd be even closer to F tier. This is just something that you wouldn't really need to invest into. We have trapping XP percent, which at max will give you 25%. And if you double it, will give 50%. I don't know about you. Trapping XP is very hard to come by and is very good. I am personally a huge fan of this. Trapping XP is definitely going to be B tier. It's really good for nature traps. Trapping is a huge punishment to try to even get levels 4, especially running with nature traps, prayer of proficiency, and transfusion. So definitely put that bottom B tier. Next, we have the starting tower defense points. At max, we'll give you 100. And if you ×2, it will give you 200 points. Early game, this is very strong. Things for getting an early start at Frosty Firefight. This would say would be more closer to A or S tier at some point, but due to it just being overall throughout the whole game, it does fall short. So therefore, I would put it at B tier. It could be useful for you to maybe put a couple of points in just to get you started in tower defense. But other than that, it falls off very, very quickly. Cannoli will actually just a few Poisonics to start. For early game, it makes it really good. Later game, not as much. We have tab 1 talent points. At max, we'll give you 11, and ×2 would be 22. Easy. Holy moly. Easiest S tier of my life. This literally solos everything 100%. You need this any time of the year. God tier. This is the type of upgrade that would place auto loot. I don't know about you, but if I could pay real money for these types of talent points, you know I would. Let's be real here. What a waste. Don't even bother. If you see this one, they should be paying you gold balls not to put points into it. Don't take it. Garbage tier. Bottom of F. will be the highest bottom of F by far. This is like saying we have talent points at home. Next up is weapon power. At max, we'll give you 7, and times 2 will give you 14. See, weapon power is kind of the same as, base defense, although it got buffed in the hole. It was a little bit better. It's not bad for early game, but this is more like mid-game sort of style. So it's not going to give you as much as you're hoping for. It hasn't been good since World 3. It got really nerfed for a while. So, I mean, it's not necessarily ideal. So I would put it bottom of the pack C tier, almost on its way to F tier, but it is better than base damage by a while. I would say F and C tier are basically the ones where it's like, I could or I couldn't. It's just based off if they're just a little bit better and they don't deserve to be an F tier. Moving on, we have skill XP %, and at max, we'll give you 10, and cosmic will give you times 2. I'm thinking that skill XP is always really good. It is always going to be a priority. I don't think it's good as trapping XP, but it does feed into trapping. I would say it's like B tier, just above. Tower defense, both are no buy. F tier is just insulting to us. Yeah, but we need to take this into a consideration of all people. Coming up, we have base defense. This is base defense, so the scales off defense %. At max, we'll give you 20, and times 2 will be at 40. Unfortunately, when it comes down to it, FMJ would kind of just end up replacing it anyways. I mean, in the early game, sure, it's nice, but I don't think it'll really get to a place where it would actually be substantially useful. And sure, it adds into FMJ, but I mean, are you really going to spend 32,000 golden balls for this when you could spend, I don't know, maybe 5 plat to get the same amount from a stamp? Yeah, I don't think so. We're going to put this bad boy in F tier. It's better than base damage, but not quite as good as weapon power. The next we have is base strength, base agility, base wisdom, and base luck that all give you 100 at max. And then if you double it for 200. Now you got to remember, these are base stats, so these do get scaled by all stat %. I don't know about you, but these help a lot of things, such as like money %. And not to mention, since it scales off all stat, it will give you accuracy and more damage. It's just over, and also helps with skilling for more efficiency. All around, I feel like base is very, very good. So I think strength, agility, and wisdom all belong in A tier, but luck belongs in B tier, just because luck isn't as powerful compared to the top 3. But other than that, I feel like that's a good standing, and I definitely agree with this. These are very, very solid, and these are something that you could probably invest in. Next we have up is trapping critter %. So this basically just gives you more critters. Doesn't require you to have more efficiency, but this gives you more critters. Max is at 15%. You can double it for 30%. I personally think that this is going to be the top of A tier. I think it's very, very good to have more critters. It doesn't scale up shinies, unfortunately, but just having the base level of critters for things for like refinery, for scorpions, it's going to become to a point where it's becoming very, very important. Just keeping them around, making sure that you get your level 13 vials, and not requiring that same level of efficiency. I think top of the pack A tier, you're always going to need trapping, always going to need critters, especially because they're just such a hot commodity and they'll always be relevant. The more critters, the better. Exactly. Next up, we have worship soul %, which will give you 15%, and at max will give you 30%. I think worship souls are way better than critters. I think they're very, very important. I believe that this is our first S tier. I think this is super good for things like Frosty Firefight. This thing's, lets you literally ignore a lot of tower defense. This helps you get a little bit higher for breezy souls in World 6 due to, you needing not necessarily having the extra efficiency, but being able to have the extra soul %. I think this is a big W, and I think if anything, it's bottom of S. It replaces better than critters, and not to mention just spending it on like prayers and whatnot. Very, very important. We have refinery % speed. This will at max give you 15%, and if you double it, we'll give you 30%. I think this is no competition whatsoever. Anything that increases void salt production or any salts in general is always going to be huge. Always going to be massive no matter what. Salt locks is one of the roughest things. Refinery is rough. Refinery only gets maybe a pinchy bit easier once you start getting really high ranks, but anytime where you can get more refinery %, you want to take it whenever possible. Easy S. Don't even fight me on that. You know it's true. Next up we have is forge capacity. It will give you 50% at max, and then if you double it, for 100%. People may say that forge capacity is not very good anymore due to the hole. I disagree. I still think forge capacity is incredibly important. And just because the hole came out to increase capacity and makes it not as good, but you gotta remember, it still scales and it reduces 2-minute claims and it reduces the use of candy. It's just stockpile interest. Not to mention with the new worlds coming out with the new bars, you're gonna need even more. And not to mention level 13 God Shard Vial, level 13 Dreadleo Vial. This is always going to be important. And to think that it's not important just simply because of a bonus known as Hole, I disagree. Personally, that this is S tier. Now, if you agree, you disagree, put it in the comments. But I personally think that this is S tier. Very important. Something you should definitely think about doubling. Definitely maxing out. Next one we have is drop rate percent. At max, we'll give you 15%. And then if you double it, we'll give you 30%. I think it's F tier. Nobody literally needs drop rate ever. Like, bro, just spend more time farming it. Like, it's just like sigil speed. You'll eventually get it. You just need to spend more time on it. I'm just kidding. Literally best stat in the game. Like, what are we saying here? Like, hello? Absolute W. Rare mob farming. Absolute W. Multi-kill farming for base materials. Absolute W. I don't know about you, but anything that equals more drop rate is better. That's just it. 30% may not seem like a lot. It is. This should be the first one you want to max. Easy peasy. It is so juicy. Best stat in the game. Changed my mind. The next one we have is cooking speed multi%. So this is multiplicative, chat. This is not additive. 20% at max, and you could double it for 40%. What are we thinking?
S tier is a big boost.
Now, if we take into consideration people that don't have no meal left behind, it's insane. Cooking's pretty nice. Is it S tier? It's one of the strongest bonuses that you'll get in arcade. If it comes to pure potency of value per point spent, it's one of the highest. Yes, you're right. There is very many cooking buffs, but the cooking buffs that get you to rank 90, they're still not enough. And you got to remember it's multiplicative, right? It's the multiplier. So I would say, like, if you're free to play or like don't really have meal left behind or anything like that, I would say it's like heavy A. If you're more like a no meal left behind type of guy, this doesn't really get to a point where it becomes very valuable until you're like in your 70s for cooking level for cooking plates. So, I mean, I feel like it's the bottom of A tier because the value that you get for spending is really, really good. I would say bottom A tier. Get more meals, so actually def F A. If we go off the whim of a potential possibility of we're going to get more plates in the future, I will give it an A. But if we get no more plates ever, well, then it's F tier because most people have 90, or most people are at that point where they're at 90 plates. It's a multi. If it was additive, not even close to being good. But since it's a multiplicative, I would say for the grand majority of players, it would be an A tier. If you're at that point where you don't need it anymore, it goes down to like a C. The next one we have is total accuracy percent. At max, we'll give you 30%, and doubling it will give you 60%. My personal opinion, I think this is S. Literally the top one thing that you want to buy in early game, and it's still relevant late game due to Dog's Den. Dog's Den is what makes this worth it. So I don't know if it's like S, but like maybe A. Not needed this in World 6. I've been able to not hit something since World 2. Yeah, but Dog's Den and Shimmer. So things that are late game. Early game as well. Would max everything in S tier before looking at it. I'm thinking right here, it's percentage based. It is so strong. If you get this and stack this, say with something like party dungeons for the percent in early game, you're so good, dude. You're gonna run through worlds if you can get this. You will actually just never have an accuracy problem if you can get both of those. Still strong for the majority of playing, worth top A. Praise 3D printer, at least A tier. Don't forget power of 10 turkeys. I mean, true, but I mean, I agree. I don't think it's higher than accuracy personally. I personally think it's still higher, but I'm going to leave that there. If you can come to a good enough reasoning, then I might be able to change it. And mid World 6, not late World 6, I disagree completely. Bro, we literally did an account that he was at fucking Samurais and he didn't have a minimum of 50 plates. What are we saying here? This man was fucking done World 6 and he had no fucking cooking speed. You know, the people in chat, we're diehards for this game, right? We die by the blade when it comes to playing this game. So if we go just from normal people playing this game, bro, alchemy is and cooking is because it requires more than 30 seconds of your attention span. Next up, we have lab XP percent gain. It gives you 15%, and at times 2 will give you 30%. I'm gonna be honest with you, I think this goes right next to trapping XP because it's fairly hard to scale lab XP because, you know, realistically, it mostly comes from AFK gains and efficiency. Lab sucks for sure. Lab is one of the lamest grinds in the game. And it also helps for a little bit later game due to you need to have 2100 account level for lab in order to get the last jewels. So I would say that this is not hugely important. I would say it doesn't scale past trapping, but it's still, I would say it's like B tier right here. Because let's be completely honest here. If you have maxed everything in S tier and A tier and you're working on B tier, you're a whale. That's realistically how it is. Because you would need a astronomical amount of golden balls. Trust me, I have everything maxed. I know how much it takes. It's a lot. It is a unfair amount completely. Or you have to be insanely lucky with getting tons of jackpots. It is very, very expensive. Next one we have is breed pet damage percent, which will give you 20 at max, and doubling it will be 40%. So this one is a little bit interesting. This is good for like territory battles. This is good for getting 200 arena, but after that, it becomes literally irrelevant. Now you got to remember that this is specifically for pet breeding. I think it's C. I think it's below catching XP. That's what I think. I don't think it's quite F because it still has, you know, positivity for big gains, but I mean, realistically, you can get all the pet damage you possibly need just from literally the Beastmaster talents and, you know, cooking. It has a little bit of value. I think it has not as much value as catching XP. If anything, I'm a little bit indifferent. It can go here or it can go here. It's either ahead or below shiny. Either way, it's big meh for me. So I would say that's a good point. You know what? Since shinies are always farmable, we'll put it there. We'll put it below. Next one we have is nugget regen percent. It will give you 15% at max, and it will give you 30% once it's times 2 by the cosmic ball. I don't know about this one. I mean, I really don't know. Can you really tell the difference? Has anyone been able to tell the difference of regen? So if you cosmic it, you get +1 nugget every chemical. Really? That's kind of good. But like, I mean, I think it's like top of C. It can be useful, but I mean, is that something we really want to put on? It may be a rare stat, but I mean, if you have to do, you know, tens of thousands of nuggets, is it really saving that much time? And it requires not only you to max it, but then a cosmic as well. I don't think that's considered worth it, in my opinion. I like it here. I would say it still has more use in the later game over shiny. Even if you could get that +1, it would be a little bit better. And who knows? This actually might become better if, you know, we actually get the either page 2 of super bits, or if we finally get our final unlockable for gaming. Could be a possibility. All right, we have our next one is Artie Find percent chance, which is 25%, and at double will give us 50%. I don't think this is very good. And I'm pretty sure this is not multiplicative, by the way. I'm pretty sure this is just normal artifact find chance. Yeah, it's a flat additive. It is not very good. I would put it right here, right below catching XP. Maybe even below shiny because it becomes redundant. I mean, both read damage and artifact find chance just end up to a point of redundancy. We have sailing loot percent, and at max it will be 15%, and with cosmic it is 30%. Loot value sick. I like loot value. Loot value is good. Loot value helps for leveling up your boats. I would say like maybe bottom B, or like right behind nugget regen. I think it's additive. I don't think it's multiplicative. I mean, I don't know if loot value deserves to be in B. It's way better than nugget regen. I could see it could be a top of C, but I don't see it really being any more than that. Yeah, loot value doesn't seem that valid. I would say personally, just for like the sake of leveling up boats, but here's the ideology that I'm thinking. Okay. The loot value, it helps you level up your boats when you're pretty much at that point where you don't need to level up your boats anymore. But that's the same with nugget regen. It's like you don't really need extra nugget regen for the sole fact of getting a higher nugget to just basically get more bits when you're already completed. It's the same ideology. So I would think that they should be in the same spot with each other. We have white percent essence gain. And at max, it'll be 20%. With cosmic, it will be 40%. I think that's pretty good. I think we're always going to get to a point. Endless summoning is always going to be a thing. You got to remember that. There is not going to be an end to endless summoning. And you got to remember, what is in white essence? That's right, mana regen. That's big important. To think that white regen isn't important is crazy. And familiars. But I mean, we don't really need that for familiars. I would say, personally, it goes right there. I would think it goes right below accuracy. So it's not massive by any means. But I mean, it's better than a lot of the other choices, though, you'll be getting. By far. But I mean, realistically, if you take anything in A tier or anything in S tier, I mean, I don't think you'll be disappointed. Next up, we have Jade Gain percent. This will give you 25% at max, and Cosmic will give you 50%. What are we thinking? I think it's pretty good. I'll pick it this. Pretty good. I think it goes right there. I think Jade Gain is fantastic. I would prioritize it basically above everything. It's either bottom S, top of A. Jade Gain is going to be super, super important. And you might say, oh, by the way, you know, sneaking will come to an end. No, it won't, because you'll never be able to afford enough to get done with sneaking. Anything that speeds up sneaking is a big W. Next up we have is farming XP percent. Max will give you 15%, and if you double it, we'll give you 30%. Man, I don't know. D for dirt. I mean, it's not bad. Here's where I put it. I put it right above trapping XP because it's still nice to have, and farming is very, very slow. But I rather take it over trapping, lab, skill, or worship starting points. And you got to remember, farming levels add to sneaking, so that makes it even more potent. Although trapping XP is good for, you know, getting your trapping tools, etc., etc. Farming XP is also important to get things such as sneaking. 120 trap is pretty hard to get. You're absolutely right. Couldn't agree with you more. I think farming just comes out of top a little bit more, just a tiny bit more valuable. Just a pinchy. Okay, next up we have is divinity XP percent. At max, we'll give you 20. If you cosmic, it'll give you 40%. I don't know about you, but I feel like this goes right beside lab. Literally right beside, because they both in between need that love. They both are in the same spot. It's another Garbo skill just to help a little bit from being divinity locked. Actually, if anything, it goes behind lab XP because you don't need 2100 divinity level. The only reason why you need it would be for simply just like, you know, helping out with like bear god and stuff like that. But it's still a dry fart. Yeah, you can luckily stop after a divinity 1 or 2 god ranks. Absolutely. I think that's a safe spot. Higher level gives higher bonus. True. But lab XP is easier to get divinity XP than it is to get lab XP. We have villager XP multi-percent. And it will give you 20%. And at max, we'll give you 40%. I don't know about you, but this is huge. This is so strong. Unbelievably strong. So when I maxed this out, I had about 4.7 million to start. And then when I maxed it, I got to like 6.8. It was so good, dude. I think it's so strong. It is a multiplicative bonus. It is so good for the whole. It is unbelievably good with the whole. Now, you could argue that it's like sigil speed. You'll eventually get to a point where you don't need it anymore, but you got to remember, going forward, there is going to be a lot more holes. Okay? We're already guaranteed with more caverns. We're going to be getting like 15 caverns guaranteed, if not more, plus more villagers. This is going to be very important. Now, is it better than refinery? Well, that's a good question. Is it better than drop rate? Absolutely not. Is it better than forge cap? Well, I don't know. It all depends. It's better than forge cap because that would technically, well, you get forge cap within the hole. Refinery source is way more rare. I agree with that. I would say it's still like, it should be like literally the second to third thing that you'd max. Yeah, it's right behind refinery speed. I can agree with that. Right behind refinery speed is fine, but God, it is so strong. If this is something that you can max, absolutely do it. 100%. And cosmic it. 100%. We have XP mining percent gain. At max, we'll give you 30. Double it, we'll give you 60%. I mean, it kind of goes the same with catching XP. Better than catching XP, though. I would say it's right here. Let's be honest here. It gets to a point where you really don't need any mining XP because the baseline stuff just goes so crazy. He just literally just flatlines everything it's the same as catching XP. It's not really a necessity, but it's pretty good. It's not 100% worthless, but it doesn't have much value. Next one, percent gold ball gain. We'll give you 100% at max, and cosmic will give you 200%. I think it's S tier. I think it's the best of the best. If you can max this out first, you max it out. Why? Because it gives you 100% more golden balls. Oh, and what happens to cosmic? Oh, that's 200%. So that means you're saving yourself literally 200% worth of time. It literally halves every other invested. It makes everything easy tier. All right, next up is we have the fishing XP gain percent. It's 30% at max, and if you could double it, it will bring up to 60%. I mean, I think it goes right here. I think it goes right above mining, because I would say fishing XP is more important than all of them combined. I think out of the 3 XPs, that's the best. Fishing XP is the easiest to get? What are you talking about? What do you mean it's the easiest to get? How? Equinox cheese. Oh, you could say the same with all the other shit. Nah. It's the most important fishing XP out of all of them. I don't give me that shit. All right. Fine. I'm going to leave it here, but I mean, they're basic. Fine. Here. There you go. I'll give you that. Just because of the sea salt. We have sample size percent, which at max will give us 2%. With cosmic, it will give us 4%. I mean, it's so easy to get this without spending points on it. Like, once you get 90%, you're done. No. Do you know how easy it is to get 90%? Actually, you should know how easy it is. I recently released a 3D print video. It is god-awful easy. So the only time where I'd say this is good is if you're trying to not run Royal Sampler. This is the only time when I'd say it's really, really beneficial. So, I mean, I would say I'd rather not see people waste their golden balls on sample size. You should just be focusing on Royal Sampler. Royal Sampler would save you so much more than this. If anything, I would rather put it over here, but it's definitely C tier. Or drop the prayer entirely. Look, if you're at that point where you're deciding that you want to drop the point entirely, you should max out this rest of this stuff first before you even think about that. That is such an overly end game standpoint. If you're at a point in time where you're like, I want to use that 2% that I get from printer sample so I can drop Royal Sampler, you're end game. Like, that is such an end game standpoint. It's not ideal. Going forward, we have percent AFK gain rate for both skill and combat. 2% at max. Cosmic will give it 4%. It's good, but it's not a lot. You got to consider something. We're at a point where we can get like 500% AFK gains. Okay. Do you really think it's at a point where it's going to be that good? I would say, I personally say right behind base stats. Sure, it's decent early game, but is that really something you're going to think about buying early game? It helps everything, correct. But I think if it was maybe 10%, it would be much, much higher. But it's 32,000 balls for 2%, and then Cosmic for 4%. You can get a keychain that gives you more than that. And it's a badly rolled keychain. Don't get me wrong. I love AFK gains. I think AFK gains are great. But if you really take a look at it, it's just not enough to justify the price, in my personal opinion. So it goes bottom of the A tier. It's still AFK gains. Still good. We have cap for all alchemy liquids, 12.5 at max, and times 2 cosmic, it will come up to 25. I like how everybody, okay, let's be honest with you. Anybody who's saying F tier just doesn't do alchemy. I'm just fully convinced that you don't do alchemy. I would say, if anything, sure, the extra liquid's really convenient, but I would put it like right there. There's a lot of better sources that increase the cap, but it definitely helps out a little bit. Doesn't hurt to have, but it's better than everything else in C tier. It's either that or it goes in front of starting worship defense. I could either go here or here. I think both are good spots, but let's just slap it here for now. But I think that's approximately where it's at. And the last one we have, chat, is multi-kill per tier percent. At max, it is 5, and doubled, it is 10%. Now you got to remember, this is not base multi-kill percent. This is multi-kill per tier. So if you have 53 damage tiers and you max with Cosmic, that is 530% multi-kill. You always need multi-kill. Drowning in a sea of multi-kill upgrades. True, but multi-kill per tier will always be strong. Now it's S tier. But where in S tier? I could see it being at bottom of S tier. Bottom of S tier or top A. I think Souls are still kind of better. And hot take, I'm changing my mind. Jade goes above Souls. Right next to AFK gains? No way. Next to AFK? No shot. No, multi-kill per tier is either right here or right here. We are not going to sit here and knock multi-kill per tier. Multi-kill per tier is the GOAT. Even if it's 5%, it's insane. It's useless to early and mid game. Definitely better than Souls in my opinion. Think it should be here? It's more useful early to mid game. Becomes quite useful late game though. You're not going to hit multi-kill when pushing worlds. That's not true at all. Okay, Tython. Just because you couldn't hit multi-kill during pushing worlds doesn't mean everyone else couldn't hit multi-kill when pushing worlds. Because I don't know about you, but I definitely hit multi-kill when pushing worlds. Like the point where it matters if far above the mob that isn't needed is nice, but not needed. Technically everything on this list is not needed. So that's an irrelevant take. If people would disagree with a lot of these takes on S, A, B, C, F tier, the problem is it's a little bit hard, unfortunately, due to making sure that you can do the list within early game, mid game, and late game, because the problem is a lot of them are going to kind of differential depending on where you are in the game. I would say the S tier, if you just did those overall, you'd be nothing but happy. Even S and A tier, it'd be nothing but good things. Obviously, I would love to hear your disagreements. I would love to hear your agreements. Definitely leave in the comment section below what you feel about it. But I think overall, I feel like this is a pretty good representation of what you'd probably need in any situation. When it comes to B and C tier, maybe F tier, there might be a little bit of, sort of give or take doing to where you are in the game. If you're early game, mid game, late game, end game, whatever. But I think for the most part, overall, trying to consider everybody as a whole, this is a pretty good tier list. But anyways, my dudes, I got to get back to the guide grind. Stay tuned for the next IdleOn video. Stay safe. Happy grinding. And peace out.
What's going on? Bomb bizzle. Bomb bizzle. Bomb bizzle. Bomb bizzle.